Okay, that's it. The relationship between the Green Bay Packers and Jaire Alexander seems to be over, and a trade is coming.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. From the Combine, Indianapolis, there when the news breaks, Ian Rappaport reporting, the Packers have had discussions centered around a trade for Jaire Alexander. This is a day after we were on this show saying it's over. Now, if you're a longtime listener or even kind of a short-time listener of the show, I have been saying it's over for months. We did a show 8 weeks ago, probably, after Brian Gutekunst gave his final end-of-year press conference where he was non-committal about Jaire Alexander's future, saying it's over. And when he says we'll see, it means it's over. Now, the reason you do it this way is Brian Gutekunst speaks, then it comes out that they are doing this so that Brian Gutekunst doesn't have to spend an hour of his media time at the Combine answering questions about Jaire Alexander. It's also timed so that while everyone is here in Indianapolis, they have the opportunity to have some discussions in person. Everyone's relaxed. The old fashions are flowing. The shrimp cocktail is cocktailing. And, maybe there's an opportunity here to get something done. John Lynch saying, hey, look, we're going to give Deebo Samuel his wish. He wants to be traded. Sean McVay all but said the Rams are going to trade Matthew Stafford. So there's a lot happening right now, and it's not a coincidence that this is all coming to a head while every decision maker in the NFL is in Indianapolis. We can talk about the processes that led to this moment. We can also, I think it's important to point out, Brian Gutekunst said on the record, Jaire Alexander has not asked for a trade. So this is the Packers deciding they don't want to be in the Jaire Alexander business anymore. And I think it's important for us to be clear-eyed about the situation. Everyone knows when Jaire Alexander is on the field, he is a very good football player. But he has not even played half of his team's games in 3 of the last 4 seasons. And yes, he was an all-pro in there. And then before that, he was an all-pro. And in 2020, he was the best corner in the league. But that was a long time ago now. And then you're also dealing with the contract, the money. So this should not be surprising to anyone. I was telling anyone that would listen that there's no pay cut coming. And I think we can hold 2 truths in our brains at once. It can be true that when Brian Gutekunst spoke to the media yesterday, he was being truthful. It is possible, at least, that he was being truthful and saying, hey, I have to talk to the agent and then we'll figure out what to do. Here's how I am guessing that conversation went. Hey, Jaire's agent, we think this is a number that makes sense. Is he willing to cut his pay to this number? The agent said no, and so now we're here. And that I don't blame either side for being in that position. I think if you're Jaire Alexander, you're saying, I think we can get more money on the open market. And it is almost certainly the case that if the Packers cut Jaire Alexander, he would get more money on the open market than the Packers were probably comfortable with giving him, given that there's other salary cap concerns here, that it's not just the the base salary, which is whatever the next team will have to pay, but it is the guaranteed money that's already in the outlay. It's the cap hit that Jaire Alexander is set to cost the Packers. Now, the Packers do save money in this deal. It's not enough to, like, you don't do it because you want to save money, but that is a factor here, and I think we have to be clear-eyed about that. They're not doing it to save money, to be sure, but they are doing it understanding it can save them money. So, okay, like, I think this needs to be the kind of thing, at least from my perspective, where I understand where the Packers are coming from. I understand where Jaire Alexander is coming from. And then you say, okay, what can you reasonably get here? The Packers, he is a player who could be appealing to teams who need a corner, but he was going to cost $25 million on the Packers cap this year. 16 of that is base salary. So whatever team gets him, they're getting a $16 million player. That is a reasonable contract. We've talked about this on the show before. And it's going to be, there's real dead cap implications here. So I think the Packers are going to want to be compensated. There is compensation, I think, going to happen here. They're not trading him and then going to release him. I think generally speaking, when you go back in history and look at the tail of these things, like Mike Daniels, I couldn't believe they didn't trade Mike Daniels. He got signed like the day the Packers cut him. But the Packers had tried to trade Mike Daniels, and there was no trade market. So they have gone through the process. Now, they believe they can get an offer for him, and I think clearly their preference would be to trade him. I don't think they would have gone public with this offer if they had good offers. I think that's true. But it's also the case that I don't think they would have gone public with this as quickly as they did if they thought there was a better than 50-50 chance that he doesn't get traded anyway. I think they would just hold on and then cut him with minimal fanfare. You leak this to facilitate a deal, to say, hey, look, we are open for business. And if you go back and you look at the Stephon Gilmore trade back in the day, he was dealing with injuries. He was a little bit older, former Defensive Player of the Year. Stephon Gilmore was traded at the end of his career for a 6th round pick. So what is the value of Jaire Alexander? I don't have a good answer for that right now. If you look around social media, I see a lot of fan bases going, maybe. And I see people in the media going, the guy doesn't play. And so teams clearly know that this is a distressed asset. Is someone going to say, this is valuable to us? I've seen it suggested that the Jaguars now have Anthony Campanile in Jacksonville. They could be a team. I think I was talking to my buddy James Yarko from Locked On Bucks. He already tweeted me about, hey, Jaire Alexander to Tampa Bay. Teams, there are going to be teams that want him. The question is, can you get someone to give you something of value? It's why I have been on the distressed asset trade plan. If you can get Joey Bosa, if you can get Devontae Adams, even someone like Jonathan Allen, who I don't know that would be a great fit for the Packers, older player, expensive player. I don't know if that moves the needle for them enough. Maybe you just take your draft pick and move forward. But they can get something for Jaire Alexander. The question is what? I think our expectations need to be probably not a lot, unless they do the distressed asset trade, which is why, to me, that is like if they trade Jaire Alexander for like a 4th round pick, or even, well, a 4th round pick might even be too much, like a 5th or 6th round pick, and then Joey Bosa gets cut, I'm gonna go, why didn't they just then offer? And maybe they will have. Or Devontae Adams just gets cut. Now we have this reporting Aaron Rodgers would like to go to LA. I don't think that that's going to happen. But he would bring Devontae Adams, and it's not a coincidence that now we have multiple reports tying Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. I think on that, I think Aaron Rodgers would like Devontae Adams to come, because I think it's his best chance at getting someone to say, yeah, sure, we'll bring you because we're getting Devontae and because your connection together is something of value to us. In LA, that doesn't make any sense to me. So If Jaire Alexander is going to be traded, it doesn't matter for our next discussion because he's going to be traded or he's going to be cut. He will not be on the team in 2025. That just gets to be over. And everyone who was like, I'm not 100% sure when I was 100% sure. And then remember, I was 75% sure for about a week. And then I backed off that. He's going to be gone. So how do you best move forward now that we have a clearer picture of where the league is headed, where this draft class is headed? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. So we've talked about some of the options that are out there in free agency. DJ Reed is going to be a top of the market kind of player. I don't think he's going to get tip top of the market, but top of the free agent market. Charvarius Ward, probably an upper middle class kind of free agent. Paulson Adebo, we'll see. I think he makes a ton of sense for a team like the Packers, but there aren't that many veteran options out there. Those guys being the prizes of this free agent class. And when it comes to this draft class, I don't expect there to be good options for the Packers at 23. I don't think Will Johnson is going to fall from Michigan. We'll see what the testing bears out. Jahdae Barron from Texas is a safety for some teams. He's that like Brian Branch nickel safety guy. Well, the Packers just used a second-round pick on Javon Bullard to play that exact position. So I don't think that they'd be in the market for someone like that. I think he can play the boundary. Maybe the Packers would think that too, but that does not seem to be the general NFL consensus. And then there's some players on day 2 that I like. The question the Packers have to ask is what, and this is similar to the way we were phrasing it about a week or two ago when we were saying, to what degree do the Packers have to improve to get to where they want to get to? So to what degree do they need to improve at corner to get to where they want to be? And remember, this was a top 10 passing defense, a top 10 total defense last year with Jeff Hafley and all of those young pieces and everything coming together. Remember what we talked about when the Packers hired Jeff Hafley and after they signed Xavier McKinney. You go back and you look at those 49er defenses with Robert Saleh. You do not remember who the cornerbacks on those teams were. Now, Richard Sherman, okay, yes. But go back to the Vic Fangio 49ers teams. You remember who the linebackers were. You remember who the front was. Now, the Eagles, you know who the cornerbacks are because Cooper DeJean is one of them. Darius Slay, probably too old for the Packers, but still could be, a potential option out there for them. But the reason I bring this up is I don't know how aggressive the Packers are going to feel like they have to treat this position. Their safeties did a terrific job last year. We talked, and I wrote about this for The Leap, that putting a lid on everything, even as a single high structure, is remarkable what they were able to do. One of the best deep ball defenses in the league. If you upgrade this pass rush, is that actually the best path forward? That maximizing Lucas Van Ness, and maybe you rush Edgerrin Cooper a little bit more. Maybe you are rushing Quay Walker a little bit more. Can you add an impact edge player? Can you add an impact interior pass rusher? Can you unlock Devontae Wyatt in a more full-time role? There are going to have to be other ways, I think, that they offset this. They will sign at least we think this guy can compete to start caliber free agent at corner. Of that, I am almost certain. You can't say we are urgently competing for a title and do nothing but trade your former all-pro corner. You can't do that. They don't have the players on the roster. This is not trading Preston Smith when you want to play Lucas Van Ness more and you want to play Brenton Cox more. They don't have a Lucas Van Ness at corner on the roster. It should have been Eric Stokes, but that injury just robbed him of everything that made him such an appealing player early in his career. That explosiveness was his best trait, and now it's gone, and now his confidence seems to be gone with it. And so it's just unfortunately kind of over for him in Green Bay. I think Keyshawn Nixon has turned into a solid player, way surpassed my expectations. Carrington Valentine has become a solid player. They really like CV, but they know this is not enough. But the question is, how much not enough is it? And if what they already want to do, and we talked about this on the show yesterday, and I can't wait to bring you, I talked to a bunch of pass rushers yesterday as you're listening to this, but today as I'm recording this, I got to talk to Shamar Stewart. I got to talk to Walter Nolan. I got to talk to Omar Norman Lott and Kenneth Grant and some of these guys who could be potential first-round picks for the Packers. Pass rush dudes. And so I'm excited to bring you that. I think the Packers want to build this through the trenches. And in a lot of ways, to me, being willing to trade Jaire Alexander is an admission of the mission. And the mission is to upgrade the front. We can live, they say, with corners who are just solid if we can put some dudes in the front. And this goes back to the discussion about what is more valuable, coverage or pass rush. And I like the numbers, the data say coverage is actually more important, but coverage is a weak link system. And it's slightly more important. One pass rusher can change a defense more than one corner. Because if you don't have a corner, or if you have a great corner, they can just throw to the other side of the field. This was the problem that the Packers had with Jaire Alexander in his prime. You never had to throw at him because you had Kevin King on the other side. You'd throw at that guy. But if you have a great pass rush, and I don't mean a great pass rusher, but if you have a great pass rush, there's just nothing the offense can do. And one great pass rusher, yes, you can devote more attention to him, but that means you have to devote more attention to him. It means potentially changing the way that you want to play football for that one player. And yes, you may neutralize that player, but now you're opening up opportunities if you have secondary pass rushers to come in and make an impact. And I think if you're the Packers, you're looking at this going, okay, we can mitigate the loss of the upside that we're losing with Jaire Alexander and his ability to just lock down number one receivers. If in fact you think he's capable of doing that, I'm not convinced that anyone is that good anymore. Maybe Patrick Surtain, but that's about it. Like those guys just don't exist. There are 10 game-changing pass rushers in the NFL. Guys who can just single-handedly wreck a game. The Texans have 2 with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. We saw what Aiden Hutchinson taking that jump for the Lions did for that defense. We saw what the Vikings adding Jonathan Grenard and replacing Danielle Hunter with Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel did for that defense. You find these guys and they can change everything. The Vikings corners are not great, but that defense is really good because they get after you. And Quinton Mitchell is a rookie. Darius Slay is an aging player, still a really good player. Cooper DeJean was a very good player last year. Their lives were made exponentially easier by the fact that the Eagles' pass rush is ferocious. And just go back and look over the course of the Packers' history. Go back to Aaron Rodgers. Every team that beat them in the playoffs, every team, every single one, did it with their pass rush. All of them. I mean, the Falcons game in 2016, that was just an absolute butt whipping. So like that was everything in that game. But, you know, we can go down the line. I mean, the Packers lose Aaron Rodgers' first playoff game on a sack fumble. 2011, they're a 15-win team, and they can't block the Giants at home in the playoffs. This is over and over again. These are the types of teams that have given the Packers problems, and they haven't been that team to other people. Really, 2010, it's kind of it. This screams to me trench draft. Improve the trenches. We've seen that the Packers are capable with this scheme, with this safety play, with these linebackers, and with this coach of mitigating some of the subpar corner play. Now, if they want to go back to playing 3 deep, 4 under, they're going to need some corners. But if you're fine playing cover 2 25% of the time, then great. I do think they're going to invest in the draft at corner. The first round does not make sense to me. The second round, I think there's a lot of players that are good there. But then you have to figure out where are you solving your receiver problem such that you think you have one. This is the issue. They need to get a pass rusher. This is why I think in the draft you will see one in the first round. It's why I think in free agency, if they're going to take a big swing doing anything, it's getting a pass rusher. It's getting Khalil Mack. It's getting Hassan Reddick. It's if the Chargers cut Joey Bosa, an incentive-laden deal on that. It's trying to convince the Bengals maybe that Trey Hendrickson should be a Packer instead of a Bengal. That's the big swing. That's the big swing. Is that something that they'd entertain doing? I don't know. And right now, I mean, it's still very early on in the stages, trying to have conversations with people. Everyone believes Ja's gone. But no one, this offseason, right now, it's the offseason of uncertainty around the NFL. And that makes for an opportunity for the Packers. I want to talk about that to close out today's Locked On Packers. In Game of Thrones, Littlefinger says chaos is a ladder. And what he means is in chaos comes an opportunity to take advantage of the disarray. The Rams looks like they were going to be an NFC contender this year in 2025. It does not look like their quarterback is coming with them. That is an opportunity for Green Bay. At least in the year 2025. Now that depends on what the Rams are going to get back. If they get if they swap picks with the Giants and they end up with a top 5 pick and then get Travis Hunter and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams come, well, I don't know that much changes overall for the ceiling of the Rams, but that's a lot of big changes. Is Sean McVay just bored? What's going on there? This is a team that I think could have been scary this year. Jared Verse and Brennan Fisk and Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua and Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford and they were really the team that pushed the Eagles. I mean, they were a Jalen Carter slip in the snow away from the hosting the NFC Championship game. 5-2 in the playoffs with Matthew Stafford, and they're trying to move on. Like, I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. That's okay, because it doesn't have to make sense to me. It's not the team that I cover, not my circus, not my monkeys. But that weakens the Rams. I don't see a circumstance where they trade Matthew Stafford even for a top 5 pick and get better this year. I just don't see that circumstance. Okay? The Eagles, now, of course, the Eagles have calls on Myles Garrett. I don't think Myles Garrett is getting traded. But Zach Bond is a free agent. They're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Milton Williams is a free agent. It seems like he's just outie. He's gone. And I think Josh Sweat is also going to be gone, maybe to Green Bay. He certainly fits the mold of the kind of player that they've drafted or they've signed over the years. Now, they're going to have to pay him a lot of money if they're going to do that, and that's when you have to decide what kind of swing do you want to take? The proven commodity, the Khalil Mack for probably a little less money, or do you want to give him the whatever the Xavier McKinney defensive end deal is? That would, by the way, to me, that would be an appealing move for Josh Sweat. I think Josh Sweat is a really, really good football player. But is Jalix Hunt in Philadelphia enough to replace that? You're losing Brandon Graham. We'll see what his future is. And are you going to be as hungry next year? Howie's a madman, so we'll see. Are you going to be as healthy as you were last year? And the 49ers, I was talking to a 49ers content creator that was like, this is just it for them. Deebo Samuel's being traded. There's rumbles of Brandon Ayuk being traded. They've got to pay Purdy $60 million, at least $50 million. Trent Williams, another year older. George Kittle, another year older. Christian McCaffrey, another year older. Hurt last year. Devondre Campbell, like, lighting the team on fire out the door. And you look at this Commanders team, like, they got generationally lucky. 500 yards of offense for the Lions, but they commit some of the most mind-numbing turnovers imaginable. Pick six, fumble in deep in Washington territory. Like, they should not have won that game. They should not have won as many games in the regular season as they did, but their schedule was exceedingly easy. Like, are they going to be as good next year? They signed a bunch of one-year guys. What are they going to do with a lot of those veteran players? How are they going to buttress Jaden Daniels, who I think is going to be really good, but almost certainly not going to be as good in 2025 as he was in 2024? And I should have made that case stronger for Jordan Love, because people expected him to be second half Jordan Love for the full season. And I was like, look, he can be that. But guys who are, we had Aaron Schatz on the show from FTN Fantasy, formerly Football Outsider, saying, look, when you are really good in year one, the chances of you being really good in year two, or better, in year two, are low, because you were already really good in year one. And that's what Jordan Love was. And he was also a really productive quarterback last year. So, okay, the Lions, all that change. We talked about this when we talked about the NFC North preview and where they stand in all of this. Minnesota's changing quarterbacks in all likelihood. What does J.J. McCarthy have? We have no idea. They also have some key free agents, Byron Murphy and Andrew Van Ginkel. What are they going to do with those guys? So there's real decisions to be made here for those teams. The Packers really, I mean, yes, they're trading Jaire Alexander, but Jaire Alexander wasn't on this team last year, really. I mean, I don't think you can point to a game and go, if Carrington Valentine takes Jaire Alexander snaps in that game, the Packers lose it instead of win it. I don't think you can say that. So they were an 11-win team, a top 5 team by DVOA. All of the underlying metrics say this was a really, really, really good team. And Jaire Alexander was really a non-factor on the season. The Packers have continuity. The biggest free agent they could lose is TJ Slayton in a draft that is historically deep with defensive tackles. The Packers can ride their continuity into certainty when there is chaos everywhere else. There's a lot of, and this is the week, and there's hyperbole everywhere, but like, I'm talking to Steelers guys, and they're like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is not coming here. That's not happening. And the Giants seem to want Matthew Stafford, but maybe if they strike out on Matthew Stafford, if Matthew Stafford, let's say, goes to the Raiders, could the Giants talk themselves into Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers has apparently reached out to the Giants. It's getting a little sad. Like, Ty Dunn suggested this, that he might get Bill Belichicked. And I think that's true. I don't see the fit on any team. I don't think there's anywhere where he can bring Devontae Adams. I don't think there's anywhere that wants to win, that wants him. I don't see Sean McVay wanting him in LA. So you want to talk about who won the breakup? I mean, that has been asked and answered already, but this is just more evidence that the Packers have come out way ahead on this. And I think they have a chance to slide in where other teams have slid down a little bit or created at least more uncertainty. And that gives them a really good opportunity, but they have to nail this offseason, especially you're moving on from Jaire Alexander. What can you get there? And then how do you address these 3 big positions? This is going to continue to be the conversation that we have all off season. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. You're going to hear from the pass rushers. I have a ton of great sound from those guys. We're going to get to know them a little bit. And it's going to be fun to get into that. And then as we move through the testing through the weekend, we'll be able to cross some guys off the list. We'll be able to bring some guys under the umbrella that maybe we weren't sure or didn't know. So this is a really fun time of year, and I'm excited for it. I'll be coming back from the combine, and have plenty to say about all of it. Follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski, the podcast, wherever you find podcasts, and on the social medias as well. Go subscribe over on our YouTube page so you can stay locked on Packers.